Yeah, I kind of have those wow moments every day because kids are picking things up at a different pace, but when they when they get comfortable with the skill that we're doing, with whatever tool we're using at the time, they start working forward independently. And they're just like thrilled. I got it. And they're trying to show me their answers. And I'm like, hold on, wait. They're gaining confidence in their skills to do the math that we're doing. I've seen kids reach mastery on a lesson, and I give them the same kinds of questions a couple weeks later, and they still have it. So I can tell that it's kind of growing in them and really, really working for them. And then I have kids who have been completely put off and who are so discouraged. I can't do this. And I have a couple of those kids who are now not doing that. They're willing to try. We're going slower with them than with some of the other students, but they're willing to try now because it's organized in their mind. They can see the pieces coming together. So that's what makes it.
I do, we do, you do. And so that was kind of good to see them practice that and build up the confidence. And having the smaller group was helpful to try to encourage the individual.
They were using, we went through the multiplication lesson, and they're using calculators significantly less, which is great. So I felt like with the I do, we do, you do model, as soon as we started going into the we do, once we started doing a couple of those problems, the kids started getting more comfortable with the process and what they were needing to do within the lesson. And you could tell just by the quickness that they were improving on the skills, because they would start off with, taking a little bit longer, and as we progressed through the lessons and as they did more problems and applied the skills that were taught during the I do session, they were quicker to solve problems.
And then it really follows that like I do, we do, and then you do model. And it's really great, really, repetitive in the sense that you get to practice all the different skills, so you feel much more confident once you actually get into it.
However, just doing the 3 checkpoints with them and going through the practices, their fluency got just even like the 3 session, and then they gain more confidence. And then I wish.
So we were kind of going through, our typical session. I was introducing a new way or a new method of completing that particular calculation, let's say for multiplication. And there was just that connection of like, oh, I've done this in class, or, oh, I remember hearing about this in class. And so then I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere where like now we're also having that retention piece. It's not just like me giving you this skill and you only learn it in isolation here and only remember it here. It's making those connections between the intervention setting and the classroom setting.
Yeah.
I think that confidence piece especially. I think when we first started working together, he's a pretty reserved kiddo, but I think there was a lot more openness when we started working together. When I do kind of ask and check in on that self-reflection piece, there just seems to be a lot more confidence in like, okay, I got what you were saying in here, I'm gonna take it back to the classroom. The growth piece. Elementary. My name is Angela Claudius, so I don't know if that's needed. And then it kind of naturally came up in conversation through the middle school lens, just some kiddos needing some support.
Trying to supplement a little bit of regular fluency of addition and subtracting, just numbers, multiplying numbers, and I saw some of my kids are still doing the fingers, or like it takes them longer to process their multiplication. I was trying to figure out how to help like tier 3 stuff with math, and I didn't know what to do. And so when the We Day came up and you mentioned the Delta RTI, and I was like, I don't know how reliable it'll be, but I'll go see, because I didn't have any other classes to go to or any We Day
Before I started using the Delta Math RTI, I had kids at all different levels, and I couldn't figure out how low I needed to go on foundational skills to get them boosted. And so Delta Math RTI, when we did the assessment, it helped me sort them out into what groups we needed to have.
Okay, So I am an intervention specialist, so I work with students that do have deficits in math problem solving and basic math facts. So obviously that's going to play a part in why I would use Delta RTI Tier 3. And then I also am in a team taught setting with my math teacher was there. And we kind of were just trying to figure out ways that we could close the gaps within our classroom. And so the reason why we started Delta RTI was to do so during our flex time, just because some of the skills that we were needing to cover weren't necessarily going to be covered by the curriculum. And so we worked together to look at students that, you know, fell in kind of either the C, D, F range, and screened them to see where we needed to cover.
Yeah, I guess the thing I was most nervous about was the structure of it, and then realizing that I had to run 2 different groups, and how the group who was working independently would do while I was focused on the other group. And that's really worked out. When I started it, well, obviously I was nervous, but like I said, it's working really well. So I guess I would encourage teachers, if they're hesitant, to try it. It does take a minute to set up. There's paperwork to do, there's packets to make, things like that. But once you've done that work, you're set on that lesson for a number of days, and it takes away the everyday, what am I going to do today? Because you already have what you're going to do today. It really makes it smooth after just a couple lessons. You kind of know what you're doing.
Throwing up. Thing that myself and Miss Thayer were concerned about was finding the time in which to implement the lessons. Obviously with 6th grade it's a little bit easier because we can do it during flex class. And then my other concern was the following Delta RTI to a T. I knew that it was scripted, so I didn't want to mess anything up, which was the biggest concern. So making sure that I knew the script and had the materials and whatnot, which you were obviously a huge help with. So. Well, I have to be honest, I was very lucky to have you, because I felt like another thing that was concerning for me was the prep work in terms of like printing off all the materials, getting everything set up. And I feel like that if you were doing that alone as an additional thing on top of your lessons that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, that would, I think, be looked at as a con, because it is a lot of prep work. But once you have everything, it's so easy and so quick to implement.
Yeah, perfect.
My biggest sense of nerves, I've always liked math, so I've always felt pretty comfortable with math, but obviously given that it's been a long time since I've ever done that kind of math before, and I obviously don't have the teaching background, my initial nervousness was like, okay, am I going to be able to explain it in a way that makes sense, in a way that follows along with the patterns of, you know, evidence-based teaching that we have now? And then that worry was very quickly subsided, because the Delta Math program has everything laid out for you. There's just these different resources, manipulatives that you can use, place value cards, and then it's just scripted. So even if you don't feel very confident in, you know, your ability to explain the math concept, it's so laid out. There's even models for the person administering the intervention. I would say yes, obviously in the ideal world you would want someone who's very knowledgeable and has that math background, but like I said, I think it's so scripted, and not in the sense that like you feel like a robot when you're talking, but it's just very scripted and very laid out and very thoughtful and intentional in the way that it's worded, and it's very clear. It doesn't use very complex language.
The screening process, well, I felt the screening process was easier than I anticipated, and because Delta RTI provides you with the spreadsheet that you can input all of your data, and it immediately shows you where those areas of concern are, it was so easy to put groups together, and really helpful just to see where everybody's at and who needed what support, and how that can be provided. So I loved it. I thought the screening process process was great. And I thought that the way that you could see all your data and all of your information
As
on
in fourth
where
grade
the-
centers, it helped break down like what skills they need to practice. And so and a lot of those students were like my EL students or my IEP students and a couple of gen ed students. And so when we did the screeners and I looked at what the results were, how much, like what they need to work on, and when we did our flex that way, I was able to have my teen teacher teach my flex period, like what they're learning in math or extended, and I was able to pull the kids out to do a little bit more of the multi-digit multiplication.
Even the screening tool is really helpful to even just see where the gaps are, even if they can't get to maybe the subsequent, lessons. There's at least ways to identify what are the gaps, and it makes it easier to group kiddos that way.
So from what you're saying, would it be safe to say like what is it worth continuing?
It's worth
to use?
continuing. It's worth continuing to use.
Better than you thought.
Pretty much
Here.
immediately, honestly, once you helped me through the script and showed me how I was going to implement the lessons for Delta RTI, it wasn't as bad as what I thought it was going to be, and the lessons aren't that long. They're only 20 minutes. Once I got started, it was pretty quick and easy to pick up on everything. They were applying those skills, and I think they felt success within themselves, that they were able to do things on their own that they weren't previously able to do.
Absolutely, definitely. Because it gives, if a special ed teacher does it, it gives them a place to start from as far as standards. Similarly with a gen ed teacher who's just working with the math class, it really makes a clear picture of the standards that the kids have.
There became a point where like he was more on top of it than I was, where like he would just come down to my room and like want to work on it together. And there'd even be some times where I was like, I'm so sorry, I have something else going on, but like we'll get back to it and do it again. So I think that's also where I saw like, and I guess interpreted it as confidence, but just wanting to continue to work on it, because not a lot of kids can say that they want to do extra, academic support. So
it might speak to.
Honestly, don't be scared. It really is easy to implement. Once you have all the materials, you're really doing what you're already doing in the classroom, the gradual release of responsibility, and it's not that difficult to implement. So I suggest it's great. I've done it. It's not that hard to implement.
If teachers are anxious and like are scared of the amount of work that's going to go into it, don't be. Feel what you feel. At first, it will feel like it because it's something new. But once you've done it, it's not going to be that stressful work. But when we're implementing this beginning of this year, it's going to be way better, and it's going to be way less stress. And because of how we're going to try to, I am excited to see those students build up the confidence, develop the skills, and knowing how Delta Math is right now, I'm not worried about the amount
And
of work, 'cause it's not really
I
hard.
have, with my experience, I let them know it was very easy, and because it's scripted, I feel like
Might be
anybody.
hesitant.
yeah, I would say oftentimes the interventions might seem like this very big, scary, complex, time-consuming process, but teachers are definitely well equipped to provide that sort of intervention. And beyond that, I think they'll notice that there are just a lot more positive impacts that come from it as well. You build a relationship with your student, you see them gain more confidence, and they just feel like they can start doing those skills. So I would say to not be intimidated by, what an intervention may seem like, because especially Delta Math RTI, it's not very long at all to administer once you kind of get the hang of it. And
This is my second year teaching math and science, and at first I was going to be like, I'd rather teach science and tutor math, because I think math needs a little more focus. But I think because of this Delta RTI stuff and seeing how like leaning towards stuff. Like I kind of want to stay teaching math if they're gonna make me pick one subject, which is crazy because I would have never have said that earlier this year.
Oh wow, so it's giving you some personal confidence.
Yeah, personal confidence of like I can really help these kids